Hello and welcome back to the Australian Retirement Podcast. I'm here today with Mandy Manniz, Challenger Chief Executive Customer, if I've got that correct.
You have. Hello, James.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show.
Loving it.
This is going to be an absolutely awesome episode because one thing that Challenger does incredibly well, you do a lot of things well, but one thing that Challenger does incredibly well is this Retirement Happiness Index. And today, we're going to talk a lot about that because there are some incredible findings that have come off the back of that and things that I think really allow both pre-retirees and retirees to perhaps reframe what's actually important and do everything they can ultimately to have a happy retirement, right?
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. And that's the beauty of the index, James. You know, We've spent so much time in the press over the last several years talking about the negativities of retirement, almost reinforcing in retirees' minds that they should lack confidence and they should be worried about this and worried about that. And we thought, well, if our purpose is to deliver confidence in retirement, financial security in retirement, shouldn't we know then what makes people confident? Well, happiness makes people confident. So how could we kind of bring that to life? So that was really some of the sort of brains and thinking behind this. And it's just glorious to be able to go out with some real positivity for retirees.
Yeah, I really resonate with that idea that there's so much negativity about retirement. I'm forever having this Mexican standoff with our marketing team because we will look to, like we might do a video on YouTube or something along those lines, but it's always framed with this really negative connotation about like the things that you have to get right to avoid having a horrible retirement. And of course they're pushing at me saying, well, yes, but this is what gets clicks. This is what results in people being engaged. And I'm saying, but there's this, like, we want to be optimistic and positive and supportive rather than saying, hey, your retirement's going to be horrible unless you watch this video, which is the implication of so much, almost all marketing content for retirees. Yes. So it's very refreshing to have something on the other side. Yeah,
you know, you're so right. But also, James, tell your marketing team, we got a lot of clicks on this. So, you know, we did lead with actually some of the, let's face it, you think we're a financial services company, but the Retirement Happiness Index is saying it's you going out and doing activities. It's having hobbies in your life. It's having a purpose. Those are the things that lead to greater mental health, and those are the things that lead to a happier retirement. So that's what we're going out with all of this marketing material around the Happiness Index because it's factually correct, of course, but it's getting clicks. So, you know, you've got to love that. I think there is a desire for people to hear you know, they know what they're worried about. What they want to know is, what are other people doing? How can I, you know, do I have things that are in my own control that I can do to make a difference to my retirement? And this is what the Happiness Index helps them see, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, then let's jump straight into this. I'd be really grateful for you please explain. Can you give us a quick overview of the Retirement Index, or the Retirement Happiness Index? I'm sorry. Like, what does it measure? Who was surveyed, and why is it important, please?
Yep, sure. So we did it in conjunction with YouGov. We surveyed more than 1,600 Australians that are 60 years or over, and we sought to track the factors that make them happy in retirement. So we asked those questions, and the three major factors that came up were, as I said before, activities and hobbies, having a purpose, having mental health. But the idea is, if we can track these and then index it and have a number, then we can, and we're in our second year now, we can really measure through time what is making people happy. They can see what's making them happy, and hopefully then more of the industry and Australians can do things that link to that happiness, and we'll end up, you know, in a far better place. I don't know about you, but, you know, our retirees, they're either our parents or our grandparents, or they're people that have, you know, worked hard in and out of the home, you know, and really built what we all enjoy today. And so how can you not want them, if there are things in our power that we can do to help people be happier, how can we not want to do that? So the index is, last year it came out at 70. That was the number that was indexed. And this year it's pretty similar at 69, although there are some quite big messages within those numbers. Yeah,
I'm keen to hear your thoughts around that number itself. So firstly, you know, when we think about 69 or 70 or in that sort of mark, I mean, the goal, ideally, of course, is something in the 90s. It's far higher than that. What are your thoughts broadly when you get these results and you're thinking about Australians at 70 out of 100 for happiness? Is that a good outcome? Does that show that there's a lot more to do?
Look, I think it's a good outcome, but I think we'll need to see it over a number of years to really give you an answer that's truly in context. But when we do talk to these retirees and we track the factors that make them happy, we are getting a sense of happiness. So, which is, as I said before, there's a lot of doom and gloom that we talk about, and there are challenges. So if you look into the numbers in the index, definitely we're seeing that pre-retirees are more anxious than retirees. So, and more anxious than they were last year. So, for example, pre-retirees last year, 70% said that they were extremely or overly worried about running out of money. This year, that's gone up to 76%.
Which is a big increase, 10%.
Which is a big increase. Now, I think, what's come through is that's really cost of living pressures and anxiety about running out of money. You can imagine if you looked in anywhere in the news, and now I'm not just saying being negative, but just we're seeing out there that we go to the supermarket and the bag of goods that we bought a year ago are much more expensive today than they were in the past. And that weighs on everybody. You see, there's a lot of headlines around superannuation balances going up and down with volatility. People don't always interact with their super, and we know that. So then when they see a headline that says, there's quite a lot of negativity or volatility in the numbers, that also creates concern. But the fact that it's coming through in the pre-retirees, I think, is where it's most interesting, because that's when you're at that point in time where you're starting to think, well, I'm not going to have a salary. From the point I decide to retire, everything changes for me. Up until now, I've had probably a super fund that's been focused on maximising my nest egg. Tick, great. Every month or fortnight I've had a salary that comes in and I've been able to use that salary to budget for my goods. So I've got this double whammy here where cost of living's going up, volatility's going up, that's shaking my confidence in those factors. But then I'm about to make a decision that means I'm not going to have an income anymore, nor do I have the same opportunity to go and build wealth again that I have when I'm a working person. So those things really have come into play, and I think created that big jump from 70 to 76.
Yeah. It's interesting to observe that the retirees score happier more broadly than pre-retirees. Now, I mean, one of those things some people might listen to this and intuitively think, of course, they're not bloody working anymore. They don't have those headaches. But we're not just talking about retirees in their first year of retirement. We're talking about retirees across the spectrum of retirement. And for those of you who have retired, then you would certainly have learned that despite the fact that you're no longer giving 40 hours or 30 hours or whatever number to your employer or to work, that time gets soaked up pretty quickly between looking after grandkids and doing hopefully lots of things that you want to do. I find it really interesting, in particular, that this idea that as a pre-retiree, it's as though perhaps there's more uncertainty as to the future when you're a pre-retiree. Like you were talking about with super balances, for instance, and you see this news saying super balances have been an market event is going to be horrible. When I sit down with members for reviews, it's not uncommon to say to someone, have you been watching your super balance because there's been a lot of volatility? And the answer is no, I deliberately haven't looked.
Yeah.
And on one hand, there is that element of ignorance is bliss, but also this is, perhaps when you're like, sometimes the data is important in order to give you that confidence to say, oh, it's not as bad as my mind was telling me it was going to be.
Oh, what a great point.
Very often when the follow-on of that conversation, have you looked at your super balance? No, I don't even want to think about it right now. Okay, well, I'm here to tell you about it. So it has fallen, and it's fallen from X to Y. And more often than not, the response is, oh,
phew,
that's better than I thought it would be. That's a lot better. Like, there's relief in that. It's interesting how when you deliberately don't look at that, or when you're not engaged with whether it's your super balance or more broadly your retirement plans as you get closer, the fear of events is like, it has a higher magnifier, doesn't it?
It sure does. And, you know, you just made the point when you're talking to your clients. So this was the other, I think, really valuable point that came out of the happiness index, which was just how much happier advised Australians are. Again, I'm always talking about this over 60 cohort that were in this survey, but advised clients were materially happier and less anxious than unadvised clients. And the point you just made there about there'll be anxiety, but then you've said, hey, look at your balance. This is the number, and then there's relief. The other thing, you know, I'm seeing, and it might be because I'm in the industry, but I am seeing it a lot more, which is the super funds. They're really proactive now and doing some fantastic communication with their members. I think that might not have been in the case as much in the past, whereas I definitely in the last couple of years they've been making a huge effort. And if you just go onto your app, or ideally talk to your advisor if you've got one, but if you haven't got one, go onto your super app or go onto your super website if you're worried and have a look, because the point you just made is there's probably some very good communication there that can put you at ease. The other couple of areas that came out of this, which I think are interesting, is, and maybe not surprising, but just women. So a third of women are extremely or very worried about running out of money. So 1 in 3 versus 1 in 5 men. So it is an issue for both genders, but that female area is more pronounced. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you look at women historically have taken time out of the workforce to raise children. And that's one factor. And then women, we know, typically on average live longer. So you've got that double impact of time out, and maybe you've had 2 or 3 kids, and so that could be 2 or 3 years out of the workforce, 2 or 3 years out of getting super guarantees that then compound to increase your wealth. That's there. Now, we're doing a lot to change that. You know, I love how many of our men take paternity leave. We've got some very generous terms for them, for all of our people, but I love to see it. So these things are changing, but this is an index this is a survey that's talking to people that are 60 and over today, so they didn't have those benefits.
Thanks for sharing that. And we've spoken previously about that on the podcast, in the sense that it's women are really underrepresented when it comes to retirement planning. And part of that is, you know, perhaps, well, there's lots of reasons you could attribute to, and most of them you've raised there in terms of career development and the natural way in a lot of cases that the responsibility that tends to be placed with women to raise families, and I'm going to work 3 days, like she might work 3 days a week while he works 5 days a week, and that becomes the norm, which means that career progression is on a totally different trajectory, and a whole heap of issues like that. But for me, this really stands out in as a signal for women to be more proactive early and engage more with their finances early. For example, not necessarily go and see a financial advisor, but as you suggested, be more proactive by looking at your super fund and understanding those things a little bit better, because we know that education is linked to financial progress, right?
We absolutely do. And we also know that I can't remember the stat right now, but half of the Australians that are in this index are saying we don't know where to go to get resources to help us with retirement. So that's going to be across both genders. And yet when you are educated, when you do have a plan, you feel like you've got that confidence, and that makes a massive difference. And you know what, James, there is so much resource available to people. We've said go to your advisor. Okay, find a financial advisor. Now, that may or may not work for you. If it doesn't, there's a significant amount of information that your super fund will give you and make available for you. The government's got the Money Smart website, which again is an excellent place to go to kickstart that education area. And then, of course, there's companies like ours where because we focus on retirement, it is our purpose. If you, pop onto our website, you can see content that will help really plain English commentary around retirement and what you need to think about, calculators that can help you look at what you might need to have as an income to retire with confidence. In all things in life, if you're educated or informed, then you're going to feel better about things. One of the other things that we find really fascinating in this index is just the materially high percentage of people that say, I would be happier if I had a guaranteed income for life. Now, you could be sort of cynical and go, well, of course, duh. In fact, some of our colleagues, did say that to me. But, okay, so if they're saying that, why aren't they doing it? Because there are providers that can give you a guaranteed income for life, that it exists. So I think that is the education piece. If you know that some element of financial certainty, not everything, because you want to have some growth in you're the financial advisor here, but I've seen one of your earlier episodes of talked about how it's important to have growth in your retirement savings. So you definitely need that. But we have 78% of Australians saying I need some certainty too. And we know you can blend those and give someone that combination of a certain element of certainty, call it that salary coming in every month, even after you retire, try and make it a level that covers your needs so you don't have to worry about anything else, and then have the rest of your pot work hard for you.
Yeah.
I think that's a really neat solution, but I guess it's education that we need to help people know it exists.
I agree. Yeah, I've seen not too long ago sitting down with someone who had come into, they'd worked with an advisor, it wasn't quite working the way they wanted, and they had one thing that I loved about their financial situation is they'd separated the discretionary expenses from the non-discretionary expenses and said, well, I want certainty around the ability to fund these discretionary expenses. Oh, sorry, forgive me, these non-discretionary. Yeah. So all of my bills, all the basic stuff, if I know that that's always getting looked after, and incidentally, they were with Challenger, so it's easy to give you a plug here. And so they had a lifetime Challenger annuity, which went up with CPI to make sure that it was going to cover the fact that, of course, the expenses, your non-discretionary costs are going to go up. It was very eye-opening for me in the sense that they had a really high degree of confidence and certainty around their overall situation, knowing that even if markets tank and I have to put the holiday on hold, we're not going to Europe this year, for example, we're going in a couple of years, and that's a shame, that's frustrating, but I'm willing to tolerate that. I do know that I can always get my groceries. I do know that I can always pay my electricity and my gas and those sorts of things. They're the non-negotiables, and I don't need to worry about those.
You got it. That's the financial certainty that is then going to enable you to do the things that'll make you happy, like go out and pursue your hobbies and your activities, because you've got those things covered. Can I tell you a little story?
Oh yeah, go for it.
I love this one. So as looking after the customer division, within the customer division is our contact centre, and so I take a lot of interest, as you might imagine, on the customer calls. We had a lady call up, and she was well into her 80s, and she called up, God bless her, to tell our contact centre that there must be a problem. I've been getting this Challenger annuity payment for years. My husband passed away not so long ago, so I've started to have to kind of have a look at this a little bit more closely, and I think you're paying me too much. This number has been going up, and I'm a bit worried. I want you to know so that we can sort of fix it sooner rather than later. And so we had a look at it, and it was CPI that had just been driving it up. And here's this lady telling us that she had too much money, she more than she could spend, but it was because her husband had linked that to CPI, recognising exactly what you just said, that your expenses don't stay the same. They do go up. But the fact that you can link these to CPI is obviously very important, seriously. But it was so beautiful to have that call. And then also in the Australian recently, there was a story, one of our customers, which was very similar to the story you just told, Pat. When she retired, her financial advisor looked at what her everyday expenses were, used an annuity, a Challenger lifetime annuity, to cover those expenses. And she just, you see the look on her face and the conversations. She says, I'm here now to create memories, and I can do that because I don't need to worry about covering my expenses. And we've talked about some good stories there, but there are a lot of people that are underspending and leaving very large nest eggs, not on purpose, not for a purpose, just because they're afraid. They don't know if they spend their money now, will it last? And that can create a very, very dire situation for some people.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Australian Retirement Podcast. I'm Owen Rask, the founder of the Rask Group and Chief Financial Officer of Rask Invest. One of the great things about retirement is you get to switch off your active income and move into a mode where you rely on passive income from your investments. This can be a daunting time for a lot of people. In fact, most people in our community will seek financial advice at this time in their lives. So if you're watching the Australian Retirement Podcast, you should know that we have resources to help you find a qualified and vetted financial advisor. To get in touch with one of our financial advisors or partner advisors, you can head to the YouTube description that's below the video and simply click the link to get taken to a page where you'll find lots of resources for finding a financial planner. We've even created a matching tool which matches you to an advisor that we think may be suitable for your stage of life, your assets, or your goals. And you can also find resources on how to verify financial planners and their qualifications. That's all available in the link in your YouTube description. Let's get back to the show.
It's really interesting to hear you say that, because that's a theme that runs through the conversations at the Australian Retirement Podcast. If I had $1 for every time Drew, my co-host, has mentioned the book Die With Zero, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's all in the title. And similarly, from my lens on this one is that we want retirees to spend their money to the extent where we're quite explicit with people that come in to say that we would rather you be in your, let's say, early 80s and us have to have a frank and regretful conversation with you to say, we didn't anticipate some unusual things that have happened over the last 5 years in terms of your costs and markets and a whole heap of different things. Unfortunately, we're going to have to taper your cost of living from here on out in order for you to live your remaining years. I'd much rather have that conversation with you than the alternative. The alternative is that we don't encourage you to spend well and live your retirement and live the best retirement that you can. And how that materializes is that we sit down with someone who's in their they're fully retired but their health has changed, and they start to say things like, "Oh, we don't really want to travel anymore. It's a little bit hard, and we never get very good sleep." Or it might be a case of, "I've got that ear issue now, so getting on flights isn't an option." And every time I hear this, which luckily isn't all that often, but when I do hear it, and especially when you're looking at the screen and looking at someone's substantial asset base, you think, have I got this right as an advisor? Have I, if we had a crystal ball to know that this is where you were going to land at this point, we would have been so much more free about our spending and about just creating memories and having the best opportunities possible. And the thing that typically stops people from doing that, as you pointed out, of course, is the uncertainty of, but what happens if I get to 83 and I run out of money altogether? And because you don't necessarily have most Australians can't naturally work out what would happen then. Well, you might have to downsize the home. There will be compromises to make. But those compromises, as far as I'm concerned, they're justified in the pursuit of living the best retirement that you possibly can. So I do wonder that concept of, we're talking about happiness, just full stop, retirement happiness, the idea of knowing that your non-discretionary expenses are all covered, for example, and saying, I don't have to worry about that. I would like to imagine that does facilitate a lot more confidence. It removes a lot of that fear of saying, all right, well, when I run out, I run out. No more international holidays, or no more taking the kids up to the Gold Coast or the grandkids up to the Gold Coast every year, or whatever it is that you value. Okay, I'm willing to take that, and I don't need to be tapering my expenses when my invested pool goes down to 200,000 and then 150,000 and 130,000. That's fine. It's going to run out eventually, and when that happens, I know that I can still turn the lights on.
Yeah, it's right. And we see it through all of the conversations in our customer testimonials. Exactly what you just said, that confidence allows them to take the non-discretionary and not worry about it. We also did a survey. It was because we've got the largest pool of annuitants in Australia. We did the first ever survey of actual annuitants along with Macquarie University. And And that also showed that people are happier when they've got that. They just are. It makes so much sense. It just kind of breaks my heart a little bit that we still have a lot of myths out there around. You know, people still say that word annuity is what puts them off. And yet annuity is simply a guaranteed income for life. So how we break that nexus, I think will be really important. And I think it's incumbent upon us to do that, frankly, because we believe in this really passionately. And so there's a role to play for everyone in the industry, but especially us as a leader in retirement to make sure we close that gap.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things I was really intrigued about with this index was the way that it was ranking, if I got this correct, it was mental health, having purpose, and social connections as being the top drivers of happiness. I found that intriguing. It wasn't asset base. It wasn't how much money you have in the bank. It wasn't what the income you were receiving. Can you speak to this and why this is important for people who are either approaching retirement or alternatively full-blown retirees?
Yeah, sure. I think it's best sort of described through what we know. If you, I like the idea of imagining Uncle Scrooge sitting in, his huge house, but it's dark and it's dusty, and he's there on his own and he's counting his money. He is not happy, and I can't imagine anyone aspiring to have that life. They might like the idea of having that money, but they certainly wouldn't aspire to that life. So it's not about how much money you have. It's about the life you can live. And while the money will give you a certain amount of confidence, it's not that the confidence doesn't come from having $10 million or $100. The confidence comes from knowing what you have and having a plan that enables you to then have a sense of control over your retirement. And it's control over your life, which we all want. We're just human beings after all. These are pretty basic human needs we have. We're putting it in terms like a purpose and things like that. But frankly, people want to wake up every day knowing broadly what they're going to be doing today and what is possible for them. So that's where, the financial side of it is an enabler, not because of the scale of it, but just the comfort you get when you have a plan around how you can spend that, and then you can achieve all of those factors that are really the drivers of happiness. Not the amount of money you've got, but because you can put that aside and not worry about it anymore, that fear or that anxiety, and focus on the things that really make a difference. Social connections don't cost you very much. I mean, actually, coffee's gone up quite a lot, hasn't it? But there's lots of places you can go for social connection that are very economic. There's lots of...
And welcoming.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, lots of things you can do. And that's what will make you happy.
Yeah. We had a great podcast a little while ago with John Glass from a business called 64 Plus. If you're familiar with John,
Glass, yes.
He's a wonderful human being, but he's really dialed this in too, hasn't he? And it was so refreshing to have someone who understands that space so well just reaffirm that you, as your life changes, as you retire and then you move, you go through pre-retirement, then you retire, you have that big change. The quality of your life is really not going to be much to do with your bank balance. It's there's so much more that you need to focus on.
Very emotional, I think. And you're right, it's wonderful to have people like John Glass talking about it, because he's iconic in the finance industry. I mean, his level of intelligence around financial matters is, I think, very, very well regarded. And yet he's bringing the human side to it, really, exactly as you just said, bringing the reality in, which is these are emotional drivers. It's emotional.
Yep.
And I think it's again, it comes back to why that guaranteed salary coming in every month makes a difference, because you then don't have to worry about that, and you can spend your time and your energy focusing on the things that feed your emotional needs.
I'm also thinking about, I saw in the happiness index, there was also a section that was talking about physical health and the importance of physical health, and of course, just how how big an attribution it plays into your happiness more broadly. Is that something? I'm asking you a question without notice. The data might not give us the answer here. My intuition is that the physical health is something that would become more and more and more valuable as time goes on. So for a pre-retiree, whatever rating you'd give your physical health to your happiness, you're probably more likely to take your physical health for granted. When you're an octogenarian, it's very, very hard to take your physical health for granted because you see it all the time in terms of how it impacts your life. And if you don't, you're doing a truly wonderful job and you're very intentional with your health. So did the data speak at all to or in more detail about physical health, or can you speak to it and why it's so important for both pre-retirees and retirees?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can pull a number out to give you, but it definitely talked about activities, and those activities will morph with your capability, of course. But I think we know this, James. We definitely know that people that are able to get up and get out of the house and engage with the community, that makes a difference, and your physical health underpins that. If you are, unfortunately, for any reason, limited in your ability to move around, that's definitely going to have an impact on you. I think there's lots of different surveys and research that will tell you try your very best to keep your physical activity up as much as you can and really focus on it, because actually it even takes a lot of energy to spend half a day in a garden. You might not think about it, but there's a lot of energy that goes into that. We find that, a great deal of our customers are into golf. It's a segment, and we sponsor the PGA and the Golf Australia for that reason. These are activities that you do need, I think, a level of physical health to be able to pursue, and they do make people happy. There's a lot of passion in those things. So yes, it's probably coming through not as explicitly as if I saw your bike out there. If you keep riding your bike, every day, or keep going for a run, but physical health is going to be material. Yeah. And then the longer you live on the back of that, the more important it is that you've got a good plan to give you the comfort to spend through that.
Agreed. Yeah, we had a couple of great podcasts too, if you're more interested in that particular topic. A couple of podcasts with Dr. Stephen Liu, and he is one of the brightest minds when it comes to longevity. And he owns a business called Everlab, which focuses on longevity. But that was really valuable, those podcasts, in particular talking about not only how valuable it is, but the things that you really need to manage in order to have the best retirement from a health sense.
Oh, fantastic. I will look at that.
I've got a couple of questions I'd love to shoot at you, if that's okay, please. My first one is, if someone's listening today and feeling anxious about whether they've saved enough, whether they're ready for retirement, or maybe they're in retirement but still feeling uncertain, what's the first step that you'd recommend they take?
The very first thing I would say is don't feel overwhelmed. Number one, just relax. It's okay. You're not alone. It's never too late to put a plan together. So number one, don't be overwhelmed. Number two, in your own time and in your own way, start to build your foundation of knowledge. And I shouldn't have even used those terms because I don't want this to be difficult. So hop onto, go on to, find some advisor if you can, if that works for you financially, and there are very many resources that will help you find a good financial advisor. But as I said, if that's not for you, hop onto your superannuation website, go onto Money Smart, come onto Challenger's website, and see for yourself that it's not nearly as challenging or difficult as we in the industry sometimes make it out to be. We love to use terms that show off how intelligent we are, but really it's not. It's very simple. So don't be overwhelmed, gather a little of information, and then make a plan as light as it is. Start with a plan, because I think that will then help you step by step build on that. But, if you're anything like me and many people I know, if you think that you've got to solve the whole thing at once, it will be overwhelming and you might not be able to achieve it, and you just need to make that one step, I think.
Wonderful answer. What about when it comes to mindset? Can you think of a small shift or a change of habit that you've seen improve people's retirement happiness?
Well, yes, and it's probably a little linked to what I just said, which is that starting to have a plan. So we absolutely found, as well in the Macquarie Challenger survey we did of our own annuitants, that sense of control or increasing that sense of control and purpose you have in retirement makes a difference. So how you can do that is, again, by trying to have a plan. And I think that starts with getting a little bit of information. That's number one. And then the other thing I'd ask you to do is scratch the surface of what a guaranteed income for life is. Don't let the word annuity turn you off, because all it's doing is you're fulfilling that gap that a salary fulfilled before. So I think the mind shift is probably just be a bit more open-minded to the many different options that are available to you to help you plan for retirement.
And can I ask, where can listeners go if they want to look at the full findings or learn more about the Challenger Retirement Happiness Index?
Oh, it's all on our website. There's a microsite. If you just go onto challenger.com.au and search for the Happiness Index, you'll see lots of great stuff in there.
Okay. Well, Mandy, thank you so much for today. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. It's exactly as I hoped it would be. So thank you.
Oh, how lovely. Thank you, James. You're a great podcaster.
Well, thank you. In terms of if you're listening to this and you want to learn more, as Mandy said, one of the first places you could go to is to the Challenger website. I will give you guys a plug. Challenger are the absolute titans when it comes to retirement income in Australia. They've been doing it for an incredibly long time. They're incredibly well backed. And if you're considering the merits of an annuity, if you're to rephrase, a retirement income solution, let's make sure we get that right.
Love it.
Then you would be it would be a missed opportunity to not evaluate the offerings that Challenger has. So a real pleasure to have you here today. And more importantly, I'd be very grateful for when we have Retirement Index or Happiness Index year number 3. Would love to have you back, please, and we can talk about those findings and continue to develop this conversation about how pre-retirees and retirees can be happier.
Oh, thanks, James. We'd love to.
Thank you very much, everyone. Fantastic show, and looking forward to chatting to you all soon. As always, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, if you'd love to get some clarity on your own finances, then please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We love getting your questions because it really does help shape the show, and it helps us to be as clear as we can on what we can deliver to you that's going to add the most value. But thank you. See you next Thursday, and continue to be happy, please.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel, or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.